Welcome to the Daily Lens with the Boardroom Coach, your weekday briefing looking beyond the headlines to what they reveal about leadership, decision making, and organisational behaviour under pressure. Today's story comes from South East Water, but it's not really a story about water. It's a story about what happens when operational weakness becomes a test of leadership credibility. So what's just happened is unusually stark. MPs have declared no confidence in the company's chief executive and the board after repeated supply failures and serious criticism of governance, resilience and accountability. The chair has now resigned, and shareholders are being asked what they intend to do about the leadership of the business. This might be seen as another failure in the water industry, which would be understandable. Customers have lived with the consequences. When people cannot rely on a basic service, the public debate quite naturally turns to performance, regulation, investment, and eventually compensation. Behind that comes the cost of reputational damage, and well, how do you measure that one? But from a leadership perspective, the more revealing point is how long an organisation can carry unresolved weakness before the outside world finally loses patience. And that's the part boards need to sit with. This factor ultimately rests with them. Not just the crisis itself, but the years of decisions, deferrals, explanations, and accepted constraints that made the crisis more likely to unfold in the first place. This was not, and never is, an overnight failure born of shock and surprise. In many organisations, the board isn't lacking information. It lacks sufficient friction around that information. The pack arrives, the risks are described, the mitigation plans are noted. Management gives context, the tone is controlled, the meeting moves on. Everyone's doing their job, but the system is not necessarily forcing reality into the room. This is what I relate to cultural evolution and the leadership behaviours that give permission to what can be expressed. That is where non-executive judgment lives. The ability to state what is being left outside the boardroom door before it smashes the walls down. The value is not in asking more questions for the sake of it. It is in knowing when the answers no longer justify confidence. It is in recognising when a recurring operational issue has become a leadership issue. It is in spotting the point at which reassurance has become a substitute for progress. There's also a wider point here about capital allocation. Infrastructure businesses often face long investment cycles, aging assets and difficult trade-offs. But trade-offs do not remove accountability. They make it more important. A leadership team has to be honest about what is being protected, what is being postponed, and who will carry the consequence if the judgment is wrong. Here's my question for today. For any board, it isn't whether something could go wrong. Something always can and does go wrong. The sharper question is whether the organisation is still capable of telling itself the truth before someone else has to do it for them. You've been listening to The Daily Lens with the Boardroom Coach. If this episode gave you something to think about, subscribe and follow for more weekday audio briefings and weekly roundups. Until next time, enjoy your weekend. I'll speak to you soon.